So let's talk about it. Inspiration, homage, or just straight-up plagiarism. We're going to dive into one of the biggest, most heated debates happening in the creative world right now. And really, it all comes down to one single question.
Is this art or is it theft? I mean, is artificial intelligence this incredible, revolutionary new tool for artists, or is it just a really, really fancy machine for plagiarizing stuff, you know? Is it actual creation or just a super sophisticated way of copying? You've heard it, right? It's everywhere. AI just copies. AI plagiarizes. That's not real art. But what if this fight isn't really about AI? What if we're all just stuck in a loop, replaying a really, really old argument? Yeah, to figure out what's going on today, we've got to look back in time. So let's start with today's big mess, a modern scandal. I mean, you can't go online without seeing accusations of plagiarism and cheating just flying around everywhere when it comes to AI art.
And this brings us to a really important idea, art's history of rupture. The core concept here is that pretty much every new medium was, at some point, accused of betraying art.
Okay, think about it. Back in 1863, Monet's incredible painting gets rejected. Why? Because it was too real. Fast forward to 1917, and Marcel Duchamp just submits a urinal to an art show, basically asking, hey, what even is art? Then in 1962, you've got Andy Warhol, who's using a mechanical process to make paintings of soup cans, completely taking the artist's hand out of the equation. Every single one of these moments, a huge scandal. And every single one broke the rules. And you know what? Pushed art into the future. And you can see the connection right here, can't you? From the urinal to the soup cans. Duchamp didn't sit there and sculpt that thing. Warhol sure as heck didn't design the Campbell's soup can. Their genius, their art, wasn't about the technical skill, the craftsmanship. No, it was about the idea, the conceptual act of taking something and making you see it in a totally new way. The art was literally moving from the hand to the mind.
And that right there, that is the absolute key. Art doesn't just advance quietly. It advances through these ruptures, through these scandals. These moments of shock and outrage, they weren't the end of art. They were the engine that drove it forward. So what feels like a crisis today? Well, history shows us it's often the catalyst for what comes next.
Okay, so this gets us to the next big piece of the puzzle, the crime of copying. We need to talk about how our definition of copying has totally transformed. I mean, let's talk about copying, because that word is right at the heart of this whole AI debate, isn't it? We hear copying and we immediately think cheating, stealing, crime. But what's wild is that whole idea, it's actually pretty new.
So check this out. In the 17th century, copying the great masters wasn't some big scandal. It was literally the rule. It was how you learned. If you were an apprentice in, say, Rembrandt's workshop, your entire job was to copy his work. That's how you learned the craft, how knowledge was passed down, and frankly, how you showed respect. It was seen as a conversation with history, not theft. So you can see this huge shift over time. In the 17th century, copying is just a dialogue with history. It's how you learn. But then something changes. In the 18th century, suddenly, unauthorized copying starts to be seen as stealing. And by the time we get to the 20th century, the whole idea gets flipped on its head again, and copying can actually become an artistic gesture in itself. So what was the big change in the 18th century? Well, it was this thing, the Statute of Anne, passed in 1710. This was basically the first modern copyright law, and it was a game changer. For the very first time, an idea could be legally owned. It turned the author into a property owner, and that right there is the moment the crime we call plagiarism was really truly born.
Which brings us all the way to the 20th century and this fantastic, super provocative quote that's usually credited to Picasso. Good artists copy, great artists steal. And you see artists start to live by that. They weren't just copying anymore. They were taking existing images, existing culture, and stealing it to make a totally new point about what art is, who owns it, and who gets to make it.
Okay, so this leads us to the next massive question, maybe the biggest one in the whole AI debate. Who is the author? I mean, when there's this blurry line between the creator and the tool, who gets the credit? If a machine is making the image, who's the artist? The person who wrote the prompt? The team who coded the AI? Or the AI itself? Well, here's a pretty big clue. An AI doesn't understand what it's doing. It has no intent, no context. It's just processing data. And sometimes it gets it so wrong that it even copies the watermark from the images it was trained on. Think about that. It's like a kid copying his friend's homework but forgetting to erase his friend's name from the top.
It just shows you it's a mechanical process, not a conscious, creative choice.
And let's look at a real-world example, because this stuff has real consequences. On the left, you see the amazing art of Greg Rutkowski. On the right, an AI image generated in his style. For a long time, "in the style of Greg Rutkowski" was one of the most popular prompts people were using. The internet was flooded with images that looked like his work, all without his permission. His name literally became a command, a keyword. So, where's the line? Is that inspiration, or is it something more like identity theft?
So, where is that line? How do we even begin to tell the difference? Okay, here's a way to think about it. Step 1, you have plagiarism. That's just a straight copy-paste, no new ideas, no credit. Then, step 2, you have homage. That's a respectful shout-out, you're clearly acknowledging your influences. But then there's step 3, inspiration. That's totally different. That's when you take all your influences, you digest them, and you make something that's truly, uniquely yours.
And what about the law? Well, legally speaking, a U.S. court recently made a pretty clear ruling. An AI cannot be considered an author. And the reason is simple. Copyright is designed to protect human creativity. And to be creative, legally, you need to have intent and consciousness. Two things a machine, well, just doesn't have.
Okay, so if the AI isn't the author, then what is it? This brings us to our final section, from hand to mind. The idea that the creative act itself is shifting from physical effort to a conceptual vision. You could argue that AI is just the next logical step in this long artistic evolution, a move away from pure physical skill and more towards big-picture conceptual direction.
This really is the core idea. The effort is moving from the hand to the mind. For centuries and centuries, the value of art was all tied up in the skill of the artist's hand. How well could you draw? How well could you paint? But then, artists like Duchamp and Warhol came along, and the whole game changed. The focus shifted to the idea, the concept. And what AI does is it takes that shift and puts it into hyperdrive.
So here's a different way to look at it. AI is not an author. It's a paintbrush. A really smart paintbrush. A paintbrush that thinks fast. It's a tool. An incredibly powerful one that can spit out ideas and variations faster than any human ever could. So the artist's job? It's changing. It's not just about applying the paint anymore. It's about directing that very powerful brush.
And if you think this whole debate about AI art being too easy or cheating is new, think again. Let's look at then versus now. Back in 1859, the famous poet Baudelaire absolutely hated photography. He called it the refuge of all failed painters. His argument? It was mechanical, so it couldn't possibly require any genius. Sound familiar? It's the exact same argument we hear today about AI. The tools change, but the fears, they often stay exactly the same.
But is it really that effortless? Take the case of Jason Allen. He's the guy who won first prize at the Colorado State Fair with an AI image and caused a massive uproar. But here's the part of the story most people missed. He spent over 80 hours creating that piece. 80 hours! He wrote incredibly detailed prompts, and he generated something like 900 different versions to get to that one final image. So the effort wasn't in the brushstrokes, no. It was in the vision, the curation, the endless refinement.
So, at the end of the day, AI is a tool. And the real question is, what are we going to choose to create with it? Look, the technology's here. It's not going away, just like the camera didn't go away over 100 years ago. And all this panic over whether or not it's real art, it kind of misses the bigger picture. The important question isn't about the tool, it's about us. What new ideas, what new stories, what new scandals are we going to create with it? That's the real question that we, all of us, have to answer now.